Welcome back to the Still Rolling podcast, the place where we talk about the art and the grind and the life lessons that come with stepping onto the mat. I'm your host, Matthew Montgomery, and today's guest is a true pillar of Brazilian Jiu Jitsu here in Ohio and far beyond. Robin Gieseler is a black belt under Helson Gracie, a longtime instructor at Gracie, Ohio, and one of the most respected voices, at least in our Central Ohio and Ohio community. Over the years, he's coached countless students. He's helped grow the art across the Midwest, and he's shared his passion through a fantastic YouTube channel and the Jiu Jitsu Lifestyle podcast. Whether you're training for self-defense, competition, or just trying to stay on the mats for the long haul, Robin has been there, and he's guided others through it. In this conversation, we're going to dig into this journey, his journey from white belt to black belt, his role in building the Ohio Brazilian Jiu Jitsu scene, and what it means to live the Jiu Jitsu lifestyle, as well as the lessons that go far beyond the mat. I'm excited for this one because Robin's perspective blends deep technical knowledge and a genuine love for the art and the people in it, and I happen to be one of his students. So whether you're listening on your commute or watching on YouTube or getting your pre-class motivation in, sit back, relax, and let's dive in. This is my conversation with Professor Robin Gieseler. So Robin, thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me. This is amazing.
Yeah, it's been a fun project so far, and we've actually gained a little bit of a following pretty early on. So Robin, for people who may not know you or your full story, how did you first get introduced to Brazilian Jiu Jitsu?
So it's a little bit of a long story. I'll try to make it as short as possible. You know me, I like to talk. So when I was a kid, I was kind of a runt of the family. I was always a small kid, believe it or not. I'm 6'4", now, but when I was younger, I was sort of a late bloomer and always kind of was interested in martial arts. I was just enthralled by it. I loved watching Bruce Lee movies. I grew up in the ninja era. So, American Ninja and all that. Karate Kid came out when I was like in 5th grade or something like that. So it really spoke to me. And I always wanted to know how to defend myself. I just looked at these movies and I thought like, man, these guys have these superpowers. This is amazing. Like I would love to learn karate or whatever. But I grew up in a small town, somewhat big family, 5 kids in the family, and very rural area, and it just wasn't in the cards for me or the means for my family. The closest town that had martial arts was like, it doesn't sound like a lot, but 15 minutes away, and just money that it just wasn't in the cards for me as a kid. And I learned a lot from my dad. My dad was a gentle giant. He was 280 pounds. Nobody messed with him. He gave me everything I needed to know to be a good man, and told me it was okay to fight, and it was important to fight back and to defend myself if somebody was picking on me or somebody was picking on my sister. But he didn't have the skill to teach me how to fight. And so I always had that desire to know how to defend myself, because I got picked on a lot being a small kid. I just always was looking for Mr. Miyagi, and never found him when I was a kid. But later on, I got a job at a golf course, and these guys were talking about the owner of the golf course owned another golf course, so we'd share equipment. And so the superintendent from that golf course was this really funny, like small, 5'7", 135-pound guy who just always had it was always in a good mood. He was just a character, and always enjoyed being around him. But somebody was talking one day about like, oh, how bad this Randy guy is. I'm like, what? Like that guy, that little guy? They're like, yeah, he trains with this Brazilian family. They do jiu-jitsu. I was like, oh, jiu-jitsu? Is that like ninjutsu? I was like, finally, I found Mr. Miyagi,
Having dupes and everything.
So the term was just not very known at the time. A lot of people at the time, were familiar with Aikido because of Steven Skull, and Kung Fu because of Bruce Lee, and ninjutsu because of the, American Ninja and all that. But outside of the martial arts, nobody really knew that term very well back in the 90s. And so he approached me one day, and I'm so glad he did, because I was afraid to actually ask him. And he approached me one day, and one of the guys must have said something to him. And he said, "Hey, are you interested in jiu-jitsu?" I was like, "Yeah, I might be. Yeah." And so he said, "Okay, well, I'm going out to Colorado to watch this guy Hoist fight. Why don't you watch it on pay-per-view and see what you think? If you like what you see, then come see me." And I watched it. This is my recollection. This is over 30 years ago, so bear with me. This is the best of my recollection. And I went to my parents' house because they had cable, and I rented UFC 4 and watched it live. And I was one of the few people to actually be able to finish that live stream and watch Hoist. He fought Ron Van Cleef in the first fight. I watched I think I watched maybe some of the previous UFCs on VHS or something like that. I can't remember, but I remember watching him fight Ron Van Cleef, and Ron actually is a Helson Gracie student now.
Is he?
Phenomenal martial artist, Marine, and just an incredible, ambassador of the martial arts. But yeah,
Good.
he's in Hawaii now and training at one of Helson's academies there. But he fought Hoist. Hoist beat him without hurting him, and that impressed me. And because Ron, I think, was at the time maybe 50 or 51, oldest guy to fight in the UFC, but he was tough guy. And then I watched his next fight was against Keith Hackney, and Hackney could hit like a hammer, and he ended up winning that fight by arm lock. And I watched this guy on the other side of the bracket just mopping the floor with guys who were, it was Dan Severn. And so Severn was a wrestler.
Beast. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. A definite beast. And I thought that there's just no way Hoist can beat this guy. And I watched, and I was on the edge of my seat the whole time watching Hoist, a guy who was built like me, defending himself. I thought he's going to tap out anytime. I mean, this is white belt watching this thing. I didn't know anything about
on the top the whole fight almost.
The entire fight, right from the beginning. And then 15 minutes and 49 seconds later, you see Severn tapping the mat, and I hit the roof. I've never jumped so high in my life. Like I couldn't believe what I was watching. That was the beginning. Like I was hooked from that point on. I knew I had to learn this. There was something different that he was doing. The strategy, the technique, all of it was something I had never seen before, and nobody really had. And I knew I had to seek it out. So I started training with him. I did a private lesson once a week. I had to do 10 private lessons before I could join the group class. The group class was very small at that time. This was around Lima, Ohio. And eventually, he said, you need to meet my instructor, Dr. Hudson. And I said, okay, well, that sounds awesome. So my girlfriend at the time was going to Ohio State campus. And so I would come down on the weekends. I would have class in Lima at the golf course. We'd move the equipment out of the way, roll out the mats, and have class there. And then I would come down on the weekends and visit my girlfriend and train on Saturday with Dr. Hudson. And, at the time, he was I think a 2-stripe blue belt, but there were guys coming from 3 states away to come train with him because he had spent so much time with Helson and the rest of the family. He was one of the original investors in the UFC, so had been around a long time. And Dr. Hudson was really just one of the most important figures in my life. It still is, as a mentor, as a friend. Instructor, and he spent more time in private lessons with Helson than anyone, and so he had such a knowledge base. And at some point, I was just like, I got to move here. They have 4 classes a week.
Yeah.
And I look at that. I look at my schedule now, and I think like this is how many classes we have a week. And I think I uprooted my life because they had 4 classes a week. Told my parents I was transferring to the Ohio State main campus, and basically I just moved here, got a job, and became a jiu-jitsu hippie.
Yeah.
And
So
yeah,
no school then. Yeah, just straight
no,
jujitsu and work. Okay.
jiu-jitsu was my school. And
Yeah.
I had no idea at the time, or you know, contemplation that this was going to be a career for me at all. I just knew I wanted to do it, and that's
Yeah.
all. I just wanted to train. I wanted to learn. I wanted to improve myself. And Dr. Hudson basically was a very, very similar person uh, as my dad. So it was almost like the perfect extension of my father in a
Yeah.
way. Like because he embodied the same values as a human being as my father did, and had a deep belief in God, and that was it was comforting. You know what I mean, to have somebody like that who, I always wanted to impress him, just like my dad. It was really as a young man, having that influence was extremely powerful. Having somebody that embodies the same values that my father did, but knew how to teach me how to defend myself. And so it was really the blessing of my life. I mean, changed the course of my life for sure. And I'm very grateful. And now I'm honored to sit in this seat right now in this academy that is one of the oldest in the United States, and it predates me. I mean, he started with the Gracies either late '89 or early '90.
Yeah. Was
Became
it Did he start out, and I think I've heard this story, and I love the story. Did he start out, was it a Taekwondo academy, and then someone
Yes,
saw some Gracie, the
yeah,
in-action tapes?
House of the Rock, owned and ran by the Roushes, great family. They were Taekwondo academy, but they were very realistic approach to martial arts. So what Mr. Roush did was go to his students, and one of them, was Jeff, and one was Vince Panzano at the time, and they said, I think one of their, I think if I'm remembering correctly, I'd have to ask again, but I believe it was like a project for them, as going into black belt, to reach out and seek out information from another martial art, which is really forward thinking of a lot of, especially of the
Yeah.
time.
Get out of the
And
echo
so,
chamber.
yeah, so Vince, I think, found a tape of the original. This is before Gracies in Action 2 came out. It was Gracies in Action 1. And I think his brother sent it to him from New Jersey, and he said, "You got to check this out." And they watched it, and they were all like, "That's never going to work."
Right. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so just based on what they were watching, they tried to implement the strategy, and they're like, they thought what every other martial artist at the time thought, standing martial artists, that is,
Yeah.
not wrestlers, but the standing martial artists, like karate, kung fu, you name it, basically they were like, "You'll never get me to the ground." And without any formal training, I mean, some of them wrestled in high school, but without any formal training, they were like, "Okay, let's test it out. I'll try to get a hold of you. I'll try to, clinch with you, and you try to, knock me out before I take you down." And every single time they were able to clinch and take the other person down just by looking and following the strategy of distance management and getting close, and robbing the person of the striking distance. And when they experienced that, this is the story that was told to me, right?
Yeah.
So when they experienced that, they're like, "I think there's something to this. We need to call this Horian guy." And so Jeff reached out to Horian, and Hoist came out for a seminar. This was many, many years ago, early '90s. And yeah, after that, Jeff was all in, and he started really following it quite a bit. Went to a lot of the seminars. Went to every 2 months he would go out to California and train at the Gracie Academy. Became one of the they had an instructors program. Became part of that, and so he'd go out there for a week every 2 months, and then the off months he would bring one of the Gracies out for seminar and private lessons. And that's when he got to meet Helson, because Helson at the time was retired from competition, but Hoist was just ramping up. And so Hoist basically went to, Jeff and said, "Hey, I can't train you anymore. I got to train myself for this fight." I'm going to send my brother Helson to you. And yeah, the rest is history there, so it's very grateful for the opportunity that I've been given. And yeah, it's really kind of magical in a way,
Right. And for any listeners that don't know some of the backstory, the Gracie in Action tapes, basically what the Gracies were doing down in Rio is they were sending out flyers and putting ads in the paper saying, "Hey, if you're a martial artist or if you're a tough guy, you can come into our gym. We'll fight. Winner gets to keep the tape, and I think there was a cash prize if you beat one of the Gracie
At the
students."
time, yeah, early '90s, it was like $10,000. Like I think you had to put up
Oh,
like $1,000 or something like that. But if you beat one of them, you got $10,000.
I didn't. That's a much bigger cash prize, especially related to that era, than uh, than I ever knew. And then also, Dr. Hudson, I believe, is the first American-born coral belt at this point.
Maybe second or third.
Maybe second or third. Okay.
I believe so. Yeah, I think there was a few guys that got it before him, but one of the first for sure. Yeah.
Okay. It's fun hearing you tell the story. Obviously, our lives kind of took different turns, but it was those first UFCs that made me see jujitsu and like, man, that's the path. That's the way. I took some other paths and I've made my way back around a couple of times, but it's fun hearing that, kind of the same era. And you started in a different era of jujitsu. I mean, you were training I mean, what was the scene like that? I mean, there was no grappling industries.
No, honestly, I didn't even know that competition existed. As far as how we see it today. Like today, I think there's different factions of jujitsu. It's almost like they've become separate arts in a lot of ways. You've got no-gi, the expression of no-gi. You've got gi, MMA, and then you have self-defense. And it's almost like they're segmented, but they shouldn't be. Back when I first started, it was just, like the training mentality was just, we don't strike all the time so that we can go at a high rate of resistance and learn what actually works and what doesn't. But it was very important to keep the realistic side of it. So at least once a week, and even more sometimes during the summer when it was hot, you take the gi off and you slap. You know what I mean? They didn't have the MMA gloves then. It was open hand, and that's how you trained. So I didn't even know competition as we know it, like in the gi or no gi. Well, no gi didn't really exist at the time unless it was, no holds barred. But I remember sitting I was at a seminar. I was probably at least a year in, and I remember Helson in his broken English, which I couldn't quite understand very well at the time. I've gotten really good at understanding him now, but at the time it was hard to understand. And he was talking about like 2 points for this, then 3 points for this, then 4 points for mount. I leaned to the guy next to me. I'm like, what is he talking about? Is this some sort of game we're supposed to play or something? And the guy was like, no, he's talking about the rules of competition. We're going to do a competition. I'm like, wait a minute. You mean like kind of how we spar? Like just,
Right.
No striking? You just in the gi?
Did you sign me up?
Yeah. And there's points for positions. And he's like, yeah. I was like, oh, and you don't get hit?
Right.
Like, sign me up. Like I'm in. And so, that's the funny thing is that back then it was all about the fight. At least for me, I had I just thought that you trained this way. And at some point, if you got good enough, you represented it, jiu-jitsu, and you fought. And so that's what I was preparing myself for. For the fight. It wasn't for competition. And what resonated so well with me was that Helson's jiu-jitsu works regardless if it's in a fight or if it's in a competition. And that's the way it should be. So I was, I was all in and I loved competing. I competed all the way through, but I don't feel like now, I don't think a lot of people have the same perspective that I had, just because of how it started back then, because it really was that, MMA as a sport now, it's not, no holds barred. It's not, you don't get to see the open weight fights anymore. And, you look at the guys like, George St. Pierre, for example, like a phenomenal fighter, is going to beat most humans on the planet. But if he had to fight Brock Lesnar in his prime, well, his strategy fighting Brock Lesnar is going to be much, much different than his approach to somebody's own weight. Like
Right.
now he's got to survive, and that's jiu-jitsu, and that's what I kind of took away from. I'm glad that I came up in that era. It was very tough. It was rough, but I'm glad I came up in that era because it really drove home what this really is. It's realistic self-defense.
Right.
And they got rid of what didn't work. It was almost like Bruce Lee's philosophy in a lot of ways, discard what doesn't work and absorb what's useful. And I still feel like that is the main driving force, at least that should be prevalent in every jiu-jitsu academy, is that, if we're really going to say that this is the best self-defense system in the world, well,
Right.
it has to work. And the strategy for somebody, using realistic self-defense, my wife example. Okay, using my wife as an example. Her strategy against somebody my size in self-defense is not to go out and beat that person. It's to survive.
Right.
And that's really the essence of jiu-jitsu. That's really what it's designed to be. When you look at even the terminology, I mean, the characters, jiu-jitsu, right? Soft, yielding flexibility, art of yielding flexibility. That's the only way that you're going to be able to defend yourself against somebody who's bigger and stronger, having superior technique, timing, utilizing leverage, understanding, and distance management, all of that. And I think that's I feel like it's my job to keep that alive, because that's what really gave me confidence. It was the ability to survive. It wasn't, I feel pretty good about, defending myself against, a kindergartner. I don't think I'm going to get hurt. Right. But the strategy against somebody who's, 30 years old and 250 pounds, well, yeah, I mean, I've got to have really good jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. Well, so, you've been running Gracie, Ohio now for decades. I'm going to try my best not to age you, but
go ahead.
Gray beards give
My
it away.
beard is aging me. What are you talking about?
But how would you describe your actual coaching philosophy, and how has it evolved over time?
I think it's evolved a lot, especially when I first started teaching, I was very selfish. And what I mean by that is that I meant to help the students get better, but I was really teaching more of what, and directing the class more in a way that I was interested in at the time. Right. So I was, my 20s and 30s, I was very much in a competition. So I focused a lot on teaching the techniques that I knew well, which was important, right? In order to start teaching, you kind of have to teach what you know, to be effective, learn how to teach. So it took me a long time to really come full circle and realize that what I want to work on is not what the white belt needs right now. And so I feel like now as an instructor, my main motivation and my main goal, my purpose, is to teach a great class for that person. And I teach a lot of the kids' classes. You probably see that, most of them, and I like to teach the white belts. I mean, it's because I feel like the foundation and the importance of the philosophy early on and getting them started in a good direction for self-defense is the most important part. Like, some people are going to get to a point where they decide, you know what, I like this aspect of jiu-jitsu better. I want to focus more on no-gi competition. Okay, great. Yeah, no problem. I want to become an MMA fighter. Oh, great. Okay, no problem. This may not be the best fit for you, but a lot of people have different paths, and that's totally okay. I just feel like I owe it to the student, early on, to explain and to teach jiu-jitsu the way that it was taught to me, the empowering way. And, I guess that's how I've kind of evolved in a lot of ways, is I'm less selfish now. I'm teaching more I'm teaching for the student now. Whereas before I was, like, oh, I get to train for free and I teach a class once a week. This is cool. And I get to look important in front of these people and, all that. Like
Sure.
as a young man, there was a little bit of pride, I guess, and
Hmm.
lack of maturity. And as you grow and you age, you have to realize those things and kind of, to be a successful instructor, you have to really be focused on the student and not your own journey. So my journey now is more as a teacher, to share what I've learned. Before, it was very much focused on me and growing. And it's not that I don't feel bad about it. I recognize that that's how I was. And
That's the most important thing. I think growth is not something that stops at any point in your life. There's, I actually, I don't know I'm going to butcher his name, Nick Gregarious, or he's a prominent jiu-jitsu black belt. I saw a quote where he talked about, no, there's been no black belt that's ever gotten his black belt and said, okay, now my jiu-jitsu is complete. Like I know
yeah,
jiu-jitsu and this is what it is. But that's applicable to life. There's not a point where you know everything and there's nothing else to learn and there's no other way to develop your character and who you are.
it's
So
amazing. It really is. Like
yeah,
I just took another seminar with Master Silvio Bering just a few days ago, and it's so awesome, like seeing the different levels of technique. And I told him after the seminar, I was like, one of the reasons I love training with the masters, right, is the guys who have been there before me and that really understand the art in a way that Ailey Gracie taught it. Um, I told him after the seminar, I'm like, I knew every technique that you showed, but now I know it better. Like,
yeah,
it really was remarkable. Like just seeing the small details and not just the details, but how he was teaching them. How
hmm,
that, I when I go to seminars, I pay just as much attention or more attention to how the instructor is teaching as I am to what they're teaching. Right. And that's remarkable. I mean, and I know that the athletes and the top names in the sport are the ones that get a lot of the attention. But man, to any of the students out there, whatever your level, if you get a chance to take classes from some of these masters who've been around, 40, 50 years, you owe it to yourself to go. Like it's a different layer of technique, and it inspires me that there's more to learn. When I was white belt and blue belt, man, at the time, I knew who the purple belts in America were. Like I knew their
yeah,
names. Like they were professional,
right,
like, and now it's like, man, I've got more purple belts on the mat now than there was when I started jiu-jitsu in America,
yeah,
at least. And it's really remarkable to see the growth. And so at the time I didn't see a brown belt for, I don't know, 8 years after I started training. Like they were mythical creatures that were, slaying dragons in Brazil or something. And the black belts were the Gracies, and they were they were unbeatable. That was
yeah,
the thought. And it's just how I felt getting a black belt and what I felt like a black belt was when I was white and blue belt were two totally different things. I
right.
really did feel not unworthy of the belt, but just that, my gosh, there's so much there's so much to still learn. And I still feel that way. I've been black belt longer than any of the other belts, almost 20 years now. And I go to a seminar like that and it reinvigorates me because there's so much technique to learn. And I'm just, I'm grateful to be around the people that I'm around and have the opportunity to keep learning and keep growing.
Yeah. Um, what do you think are the most important skills for your white? And let me back up. You have a tremendous fundamentals curriculum. I when I switched and came to your gym, I still go to almost as many fundamentals classes as I do the advanced and mixed level classes. Because I want to be number one based in your curriculum, but also I get something out of it every single time I go. I'm still absolutely an average blue belt, and so I'm learning every time I go. I'm able to help some of the other guys, but that fundamentals piece is there. So what do you think are the most important skills for that white belt to keep central in their brain as they're attending? And maybe I'll put it in another way. Not everybody's academy has a fundamentals curriculum. A lot of
Right.
times brand new students are thrown into the mixed level classes where they're drinking from fire hoses. So
That used to be the standard practice, and it used to be that same way at our academy. People just come in and teach class, to be honest with you, like I was heavily influenced by Huron Gracie and the implementation of the combatives program, who one of our instructors here at the academy was instrumental in, General Michael Farrader, in the development of that. He really kind of spurred a lot of that, and he ended up implementing it. He was the one responsible for implementing jiu-jitsu as the modern army combatives. And so, really awesome to have him involved here at the academy. He's an amazing person and very, very skilled instructor. But I think that inspired me a lot to see the structure that they implemented, because before it was just the way that it was taught to us. We got all the fundamentals because of who was teaching us. Helson would come and he would teach all basic fundamental jiu-jitsu, but he was the one that had the curriculum in his head. He didn't have it written down, right? You just had to memorize what he showed and ask the right questions, and there was not much structure to it. It was very loose and relaxed compared to a lot of the more traditional martial arts. And so I think introducing that was really beneficial to the student base, because now they have a template, right? So I kind of took what I saw from the Gracie Academy and I thought, well, this is great. Like, this is, to have a clear path. Like, this is what you need to know. You're going to learn more between white and blue belt than what's on this list, but this is what you need to know. And I think that was very, very helpful. So we kind of have, and then little by little, Helson even helped me develop, like, purple belt. What do purple belts need to know? And he wants them to know all the empty hand self-defense. So that's basically our test for the purple belts, is empty hand self-defense and how to use jiu-jitsu against jiu-jitsu in a real fight, because this knowledge is out there now. Like, you go to a stadium now, you could throw a stone, you're probably going to hit a black belt at some point, right? Like, it's out there. There's so many people doing jiu-jitsu, so it's important to know how to defend against, jiu-jitsu versus jiu-jitsu. So I think that was really helpful, just seeing the success of the program that they had. I looked at their curriculum, and I love their curriculum. I learned a lot from them, here in Hinner, that is, and I felt like, and we even before, I mean, after the Gracies in Action came out, like Horian put out instructional videos, and those were great too. Like, I loved those, and that was a good template, especially back then, of knowing, what it is that the white belt needs to know, and, what are you going to teach first and all that. And then, so we modified it a little bit because we wanted to make sure that there were certain things that Helson specifically wanted the student to know before blue belt, and have a blue belt level of capability in sparring, right? So modified it a little bit, but for the most part, like, I was very inspired by what Huron and Hinner did, and it's a great program. So yeah, I don't know if that answered the question, but
it does.
I think it's helpful, especially for the beginner, to have sort of of an understanding of what they're being graded on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's difficult, right? Even here at our academy, I would say the average is probably 2 years before they're ready to test for blue belt. That's longer than a lot of folks will go, but there's a lot to cover, right? There's a lot to learn from white to blue belt. And I think once you get to blue belt, like Helson would always say, blue belt should be like black belt in the street.
Yeah.
And purple belt's more like competition ready. That's kind of, what he would say. And I felt like when I got my blue belt, I felt like, yeah, I can defend myself pretty well. And it was kind of crazy, because I thought I felt like I got overlooked once at blue belt. This is a funny story, but I thought, I'm tapping out blue belts. None of the white belts can beat me. I'm going to get promoted, and I didn't. And Helson was there, and I was trying to impress him, sparring and all that. And I got overlooked. I'm like, oh, dang it. That sucks. But it bothered me for about a day. And then I was like, you know what? It doesn't matter. I'm just going to be the best white belt on the mat.
Yeah.
And I came back because I love jiu-jitsu. The belt doesn't make me. I'm just going to be the best white belt on the mat. And at some point, they're not going to be able to, and they'll give me a blue belt. And quite honestly, a lot of my desire to be a blue belt was because I love jiu-jitsu so much. And I talk about it all the time. And people would ask me, like, what belt are you? White belt.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Like, oh, you must suck. You've been a white belt for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I do think it's very helpful for the students now to kind of have at least a clear path on what's the most important things that you need to know about this art. And those things that are on that curriculum are the same questions that I will ask as a senior black belt. If I meet a master, I'm not asking him about berimbolo or the latest, technique that you see in competition. I want to ask them, how do you set up the arm lock? Let me see your setup for the cross choke. How do you block the stick? Right? Like, what ranges, and how do you teach it? And I think that's, I at least I hope that comes across to the student base that I think the fundamentals are primary and they're so important. And it's advanced jiu-jitsu is just advanced basics. It's just understanding them at a deeper level and having the ability to implement them with reflex. That's, so
I
don't
like
know
it.
if I answered the question.
No, you did. And I'm going to kind of go to the other end of the spectrum now, as far as anybody that would be at the, purple and brown belt, your brown belts that are getting ready for black belts. Clearly they have a good understanding of arm bars and cross collar chokes. But what other criteria are you looking for when you are considering making someone a black belt?
Making somebody a black belt, man. So I made a statement once when I gave out one of my earliest black belts, and we had a wall that had all the black belts on it and their dates, and we had these boards and stuff. And I'm hoping we can recreate that here at some point. But so it started with our lineage. Had Alio, the red belt, and then it had Helson, and then it was Dr. Hudson, and then me, and so people could see that progression, like where they came from, and having the honor of going, that far and that much dedication and arriving on the wall, basically. So, and what I said essentially was that skill will get you a brown belt, character will put you on the wall. And so what I mean by that is that if I'm going to endorse somebody as a black belt, I need to know who they are as a person, and that takes time, right, to really understand. But you get a chance in jiu-jitsu to kind of see somebody's character when you train with them. Like, it's very difficult for somebody to hide when they're put under stress or they're fearful. If you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Like, the true character comes out when somebody's afraid, and everybody's been afraid on the mat at some point. Like, and maybe not the fear that somebody experiences in combat, or something like that. But man, I can't breathe. I can't escape this move. Whatever. This person's going to tap me out in their lower belt. You name it. Well, after years, you see, you get a sense for who that person really is, and not just that, but how they interact with the other students, like the white belts, the blue belts. How are they helping that person along? Are they just smashing them and using them as cannon fodder, or are they actually helping the rest of the academy build themselves up? Are they taking care of that white belt who's nervous, it's their second day, and they're afraid? Things like that. I think that's the most important part, because I was always told when I was younger, a brown belt is a black belt in disguise. You just need more time and And for Helson, the biggest thing was the ability to teach. That was his biggest criteria from brown belt to black belt was, can you teach what you know? And yeah, I think that's a very, very important skill, is being able to share jiu-jitsu. And you see it. I mean, guys, I mean, we're very lucky to have the culture that we have at the academy. Everyone is very, very helpful. I've had people come back, even who have moved away, and tell stories about, some of the students at our academy that made them feel welcome on their first day. And they spent their whole class with me. It was my first day. They spent their whole class with me, took away, I was interrupting their training, but they were here to make me feel comfortable. And I think that's so important in what we do, because we've sometimes after we've done this for so many years, we forget what it's like to walk in the door the first time. I remember being terrified. Like, what am I'm going to get my butt kicked or whatever. You know what I mean? There's the unknowing. And, I think it's important to build a culture where the senior students are taking care of the new people and making them feel comfortable and welcome,
That's, yeah. And that's, I think anybody that didn't have some kind of nerve or trepidation into going to their first class, that's just like somebody that says that they weren't scared in a fight or
right,
combat or whatever. I mean, I know that I had heavy metal turned up. I thought I was headed to a fight. So, experiences may vary, but generally speaking, what jiu-jitsu actually is much, much different than what your idea of it probably is driving to that first class before you've walked through the door.
Absolutely. And people don't realize how, until they get embedded and they immerse themselves into an academy, a well-established, good academy, what the camaraderie really is like. It's really an incredible experience for people, because, the way that Dr. Hudson would explain it, it's like you're loaning your body to this person to practice this martial art that basically is the most efficient way to dismantle a human body, right? I mean, that's what we practice. And that takes a lot of faith and trust in that person. Like, I'm putting my life in your hands, literally. I'm hoping that when I do this, you will respect it and you'll stop. And when you have that kind of trust and you build it over time, you develop a strong bond with these people. It's much more powerful than a lot of people think. And nothing against any sort of other workout or culture, like CrossFit, you name it. You're not putting your life in their hands in the same way. And, it necessarily builds a lot of trust and confidence in each other. And honestly, love. Like, you just, you want to be around these people more. So it's a powerful thing. It really is. And I know we're preaching to the choir, because most people who are going to be listening to this podcast are already training. But I think that's the story that we need to tell to the rest of the world, is that, man, you're not just going to get your butt kicked. Like, you're going to learn, and you're going to be most people's biggest concern is, can I do this safely? The vast majority of people walking in the door are not looking to become UFC champion. They're looking to empower themselves, do something fun. And we don't have to dilute it for them to still have that good experience and learn really good jiu-jitsu. We don't have to. It's not like dumbing it down at all. But realizing that what we can expect out of the 22-year-old, ex, Division I wrestler might be a little bit different than the 55-year-old, mother who's coming in who wants to learn how to defend herself.
Yeah.
So, it's everybody's journey is going to be different. But if you have the right culture, everyone should feel welcome and accepted. So, because everybody can improve, right? I mean, They may not all become world champions. That's okay. But can they be the best version of themselves? Can they defend themselves better than they could the first day they walked in? Of course. And you can't break them down to do that, right? You
Yeah,
have to build them up.
and I've heard the correlation a couple of, because obviously the internet is what it is, and with all the, you know, I'll call it gatekeeping, and people have these theories about, should you have to compete to rank up and all these things. There's a lot of people doing jujitsu that, they're not doing it to be world champs.
Right.
They're doing it,
Or have no interest in competition jiu-jitsu at
right.
all.
Yeah. And frankly, for the, for us graybeards and whatnot that get into jujitsu, that's competition. And I'm not anti-competition.
Me neither.
I've competed, I've won, I've lost. I will probably compete again. I want to compete at every belt level. But if I go and I compete and I get injured,
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
taking me out of the thing that I'm enjoying during the week.
Right. And,
so,
to each their own. It's like I was very, very lucky to have the opportunity to find this art when I was young and in my athletic prime. And I was able to compete at a very high level and never became world champion, but I was able to compete against them
mhm.
and do well. And I think that's a testament to the art that I was able to start at 20 years old and be able to hang with a lot of world champions. I mean, guys who had been doing it since they were 5 years old. You don't see that much in other sports. It's very difficult to start at 20 at soccer and become a professional athlete. Now, granted, it wasn't as widespread as it is now, but
Yeah.
I think it was a testament to my instructors, the technique that was taught and the strategy that allowed me to do that. But that competition, that competitive window, as far as a professional athlete is concerned, is very short. And what are you going to do with the rest of your life? You're going to keep, at some point, I make a decision, man, do I want to be king of the old man, or do I want to be able to walk with my kids and take a
Right.
hike? So the way that I approach jiu-jitsu and training now is way different than my body feels better at 51 than it did at 32 because
Yeah.
of the athletic part, right? The competition aspect. When you go into competition like that, especially with time limits, you're no longer playing the best jiu-jitsu. And what I mean by that is that you have, you win or you lose. And so you have to playing within the parameters of the tournament or the competition that you're in. Like, you have to put out, let's say it's 10-minute match. Well, I've got to put out 10 minutes of energy and beat this guy and impose my will. Sometimes that's antithetical to good jiu-jitsu, which is survive, then win. So I could go into a lot of matches and survive, but I'd get outpointed by 20 points. Who has better jiu-jitsu? Well, for the competition, that guy did. He's moving on. But I never felt, if the guy couldn't catch me, even if he outpointed me, I never felt like that guy had better jiu-jitsu than me. Right.
Yeah.
And so for me, competition was more of a testing grounds for me to learn how do I perform under stress. Because after a while you get comfortable in the room. And I think that's the biggest value to competition is that it's not a fight, but it's closer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if this is you on the couch, this is you in training, this is competition, this is the fight. Well, testing it here is a great thing because, like, you've been there, you've done it. Like, it's much more intense than your average training. People are watching, yelling. It's, so I think there's a lot of value to the competition, but, at some point it starts to wear on the body quite a bit. I mean, you see some of these young athletes that are really busted up, and man, like, I want to be able to defend myself when I'm in my 70s. I don't want to have 3, hip replacements and, you name it. And I have nothing against the sport at all. I very much respect a lot of my friends that compete at my age. It's really awesome to see them accomplishing great things. It's not that at all. It's not the same for me anymore. Like, I had the opportunity and I'm grateful for it. I never, I always have that in the back of my head. Like, man, I think I could think I could win the Pan Ams again or whatever, like, but
Yeah.
it's not the jiu-jitsu that I love now. Like the jiu-jitsu that I love now is the jiu-jitsu I fell in love with. I had a brief, I guess, affair with competition jiu-jitsu, and I loved it. But
Yeah.
the jiu-jitsu that I really, really love and respect is the survival aspect. And that's what I want to impart and share. I mean, to each their own. Like that's where I'm at in my journey, if that makes sense.
Do you think so the new UFC BJJ, do you think that the way that they've done their rule set maybe is, I mean, obviously it's, you're surviving for 5 minutes at a time and there's rounds, but the point system is much different, where, what they're after is obviously attacking jiu-jitsu, not necessarily survival, but you're not going to see so
Yeah,
much.
it's entertainment. That's what
Yeah.
they're looking for. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's like I said, to each their own. It's there's still things that that can be learned from that, no matter what path you're on. I mean, it's good to pay attention to all sorts of, things. I like watching boxing. I like watching Muay Thai. I want to learn as much as I can, stick fighting, you name it. I think are they using a 10-point must system? Is that how they're doing it? Just
Yeah,
kind of like
it's a 10 point must system, and so you're not getting 2 points for a takedown.
right.
You're not getting a point for a pass. You're getting points for attempting submissions and going
Yeah.
after submissions.
I like that. I like anything that pushes the finality.
Right.
And submission is it, right? Like the only way to really know who's the best is lock the door, right? Whoever
Yeah.
walks out, is the winner. And I feel like there's, I think that anytime you have a competition, you're going to have some rules, right? And that you have to abide by them. And so any way that they can fashion the rules to bring it closer to realism, I think is what we should all be looking for. I think that's what all of the competitions are really trying to do. It's just so like the more rules that you have, the more it's going to get gamed. Like people they want the win more than they want the submission. And I think that's the biggest problem, is the cultural part of it.
That was one of the
you
things
you still see guys who are champion. Like, I mean, how many submissions has Gordon Ryan had in a row? Like,
I mean,
I don't know, but he finishes people.
Yeah.
It's hard to argue when the guy taps the guy out, right? Like that is what you're looking for. And it's not that I would endorse the personality and all that stuff that comes along with the show. But that's what people want to see. They want to see the submission. They want to see the finality. Like I was talking about my competitions. Like I would have rather that guy tapped me than just held me and pointed me. You know what I mean? Like I want to know if he's better than me or not. Yeah. And just by pointing me is not showing me that. You got to finish me.
I think that first UFC BJJ event, the finale, 8 or 10 matches, only one of them went to decision. Every single other match was a submission. It was
that sounds great.
And it wasn't just the butt scooping, heel hook contest that, wherever they spend the whole match 50-50. It was arm bars, it was rear naked chokes, it was, I mean, they were all over the place, and it was actually exciting to watch. I think casual fans and maybe people that maybe don't even train, watching that would actually, they'll enjoy it.
That's good. Yeah. And I think that's what they're going for, which is, it's not wrong at all. Sure. It's just, yeah.
Yeah. Other big news today, actually, the UFC announced they're moving over to Paramount, and they are ditching the pay-per-view model.
Interesting.
So once they move over to Paramount, if you have a Paramount Plus subscription, you're going to have access to every fight.
Wow. Interesting.
So I never thought I'd see
that. That's
good.
I the older I get, like there's certain fights I want to watch, especially when Kayla Harrison fights. Like I got to watch that. But I can't stay up that late anymore.
No.
They don't end until like 1 o'clock in the morning here. And
no,
I'm like, man, I can't
In
stay up
fact,
that
I
late.
look over. I look forward to when the fights are over in Europe or Abu Dhabi because they
Me
start
too.
earlier at an hour that I can actually stay up for.
Because I want to watch it live, but man, like, and then I'll watch it in the morning, and then of
Yeah,
course I'll open up my, wake up in the
Facebook.
morning, open my phone, and there it is. Like, oh, there's the final. Oh, shoot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. When I try to stay up, my wife, she says I'm maybe a little crankier on
Yeah,
Sunday.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Mandy's the same way. It's not her favorite thing.
yeah. So if you could, you've kind of, well, to my knowledge, I mean, you had a shoulder surgery a couple of years ago. As far as injuries go, or actually maybe even outside of injuries, what's been the most difficult period in your personal jiu-jitsu journey?
The injuries didn't really affect me that much. Like I hurt my shoulder actually teaching, which was really stupid. It would have never happened when I was sparring. It was just a fluke thing. But I've had a couple of scopes on my left knee, and it still bugs me a little bit. I think it's a fairly common injury, meniscus, and of course I've had bumps and bruises. I was helping a guy train for an MMA fight, and I took a heel to the eye and broke my orbital. That was pretty bad. That sucked. And it took me off the mat for a good bit.
Yeah,
And but it honestly, the injuries didn't really. Everything else, for the most part, was just tweak here in a competition, popped elbow here a little bit. Like I've got a lot of dust in my joints from maybe not tapping early enough,
mm-hmm.
things like that. But I think honestly, the toughest time for me was probably at blue belt. Um, I went through, and I did a video on this a long time ago about the blue belt blues, right? Like, you get to a certain level and you have a good proficiency at blue belt, like, jiu-jitsu, right? The rest is just perfecting it and learning how it works best for you, in time and experience. So you probably accumulate the most amount of technique at blue belt, I think. And I think most of the students here would probably agree with that. By the time you get to your level, mid to high blue belt, you've kind of know what techniques work best for you. And now you know what your weaknesses are, and you kind of know where to focus, right? For me, mid-level blue belt, I was blue belt for about 4.5 years. I felt like the the dips and the valleys were just so extreme. And there were times where I just felt like I saw my peers getting better, and they'd start tapping me, and they started after me, and all those emotions, all those things that you think about, like you judging yourself off of how you're doing against your peers,
Yeah,
right? Which is, it's natural to do. And that was hard for me. There were times where I felt like I'm just not getting any better at this. Should I quit? And there were times where I dreaded going to the academy. Like, I did it anyway. I woke up and I came in, and I would come in and train, and I'd force, but there were times where it was a chore. There was a lot of, like, man, anxiety,
mm-hmm.
like, man, I'm not getting any better. These guys, he's going to tap me today. And last time I got stuck in this headlock with this guy, and I can't solve the problem. It was really emotionally hard for me having those dips. But
Yeah,
then I would hit a certain point, and it was like, boom, I couldn't do anything wrong for a couple months. And then it would happen again. And those felt like, those dips and valleys and peaks felt so extreme at that point. But what's really happening, I didn't really pay attention to this, right, at the time. I was focusing on this, like, I suck, right? But what was really happening was I was implementing new strategies, new techniques, and I didn't have the timing. I didn't have the timing down. I didn't have the technique down. I was not, and at the same time, everybody else is improving as well, right? I wasn't paying attention to that. I was paying attention about how I felt here. And what I really wasn't focusing on was the fact that curve was doing this, right? Like I'm focused on this valley where I suck compared to my friends, but I'm not focusing on the fact that they're improving as well. Like, and some of them just had, in some ways more physical talent, you name it. And people just progress faster at different points in their jiu-jitsu journey. Like some people really need to get to brown belt before they really excel. They really feel like they've got it. Some people do that at blue belt. And it's just time and really just don't quit.
Yeah.
It's very, those times. I mean, I look back now, I'm like, man, I can't believe I actually almost quit. But there were multiple times where I felt like I'm just not getting any better. I suck at this.
I try to,
that was probably the most hard.
It's an old adage that the comparison is the thief of joy. And one of the things I try to remind myself, especially now I am not 25 anymore. And as I roll with people and more and more my opponent or my training partner they're younger than I am, usually. And sometimes you run into these guys that I'm gonna say his name on here. His name is Seth. He's really good, and he's really young, and he's he's a blue belt like I am, but he's got 2 decades of youth on me, and he's really, really technically good, and he's been beating me every single time, kind of easily, and it's frustrating. I'm heavier. I'm at least 2 or 3 weight classes bigger than him, and he's kind of a little bit of an enigma for me right now. And I have to remind myself I cannot compare myself to Seth because that kid's training every day. He's one of those guys that's just going to be really good, and I am not him. But I'm going to keep improving at my own rate, and that's going to be all right.
Yeah. So. And that's an important perspective, and sometimes that's lost on some of the younger guys, because they probably feel in a lot of ways the same way you do. Like, he may have that same guy, his age, but that beats him every time, and he's probably comparing himself to that. So it's a tricky thing. It's like it really messes with your mind if you don't have a healthy perspective. And it's very important to kind of really sit back and say, okay, what is it that I'm really doing here? Yeah. I want to be the best version of me. And this guy's helping me do that,
Yeah. And frankly, I think another thing that, people get competitive and rather than asking the person that's beating them, hey, how are you beating me? What are you doing here? What am I doing wrong that's allowing you to do this to me? Sometimes that competitive spirit, you're not going to ask them. You're going to go try to figure it out on your own, when the easiest path to learning how to deal with that person that's beating you is forget the competition piece and remind yourself they're your training partner.
Yeah.
And go ask them. Have them work through what they're doing and what gives them trouble when they're. And
it's not always going to be an immediate answer or immediate success. A very good friend of mine, BJ Nelson, one of my black belts, taught a private to a blue belt and showed him a technique, and the blue belt went and tried it against one of my other black belts, Tom Feister, and he comes back and he's like, tells BJ, he's like, didn't work. He's like, well, well, of course it didn't work. It's Tom. You try it on a white belt first. Like, it takes time. It really does. And it's, and that's one of the things that I think is another one of the things that's great about jiu-jitsu and the delayed, gratification, like it takes time. It really does. And it's not always going to be perfect. It just takes effort and time, and it's a process, and you have to love the process. I was at this seminar with Master Silvio, and the guy was talking about, I get stuck under, he's a blue belt, and he points out this bigger purple belt who's, he's like, I get stuck under his north-south and I can't escape. And I'm like, he's like, okay, let me see what you're doing. And he tries to escape. The guy catches him, and he's like, okay, all right, well, learn to love it. He's like, look, he's like, I can give you some techniques, but you might not be able to get out of there. Like maybe you need to focus on what happened before. Like maybe stop him from passing your guard. But if he gets there and you can't escape, you're trying to escape, and that's what's feeding into the submission. It's like, learn to love it. Just embrace it. And so they went again, and he didn't try to escape. It's like, don't escape. Don't escape. Just survive. And he survived for like a couple minutes. And then the guy on the top stops. He's like, yeah, it's really good. And that was the lesson. I had a very similar lesson with with Helson. I'll tame down the language a little bit, but a guy asked the same question. Like I get stuck under this guy's, north-south, and I can't get out. It's like 240-pound guy. He's like, okay, yes, this guy, show me. Okay. And so the guy gets on top of him, and Helson's just doing his defense. He's there, and we're all waiting to see this miraculous escape because we know it's Helson. Yeah. And if he wanted to, he could have done it, but he was proving a point. And so the guy's holding, and he's looking around. He's getting kind of, it's going like 30, 45 seconds, and he's kind of getting anxious, like he's not doing anything. And so the guy thinks he's doing something wrong. He sits up, and then Helson spins around really quick. He goes, now I kick your butt. It was such an important lesson for me. Like he could have taught a technique, and I could have tried, he could have taught an escape, which I know would work for him. I could have tried it, and the guy probably would have shut it down and caught me because I exposed myself.
Right.
He was he was teaching us a principle and a lesson that, you know what, like sometimes you can't escape. There was a quote from Hickson. I'll probably butcher it, but sometimes you can't win. It's impossible to win, but that has nothing to do with losing. And that's like, that's an important lesson for people to learn in jiu-jitsu is that you may not be able to escape if the guy's just holding you, but if he's just holding you, he's not necessarily hurting you. Relax, breathe, wait for the opportunity. Yeah. So went off a little bit of a tangent there, but I think that philosophy is what really, especially at my age, helps keep me engaged in training because we've got so many talented black belts here. Yeah. My objective with these guys is not to beat the snot out of them. No, that time's gone. Like I'm focused on, if I can survive without getting caught with these guys, man, I won, couldn't catch me, and I think it comes full circle. When you first start jiu-jitsu, you focus on survival because that's all you can think about. And that's part of the philosophy that's taught to you. But you've gained confidence in lasting longer. Like, okay, the last time the guy caught me 3 times in 5 minutes. Okay, this time I'm just not going to get caught, 3 times. I'm going to get maybe 2. Okay, then, he's only going to catch me once today. And then next time you're like, okay, he's not going to catch me today. And if and that's how I would gauge my success. And then, then eventually I got to a certain point where, that competitive window and where I was, more of an athlete like now I've got to catch everyone with an arm lock on the right side. Like I'll feel accomplished today if I can do that. I was gaining my progress on effectiveness, and then eventually now I'm very, very obsessed with efficiency, right? How can I survive and eventually submit a 200-pound, 23-year-old collegiate wrestler? Well, I can't go at the same pace as that person. I have to be efficient. I have to have the survival mindset, being effective, but I have to be efficient in doing that. I have to wait for my time. Yeah. I save this energy. So when I get to that one point, right, and I force them to expend more of their energy to where they get down to here and I still have this much left, right?
The efficiency.
Yes. And at some point it's going to come full circle again and I'm going to be back here. Okay. He's only going to catch me once today.
Yeah. You actually, we were talking about, this is probably, I'm going to say 7 or 8 years ago. A couple of us were talking about what a great workout jiu-jitsu was. And you said, the longer I do jiu-jitsu, the harder it is for me to get a good workout. And so that's what we would call efficiency.
That's the objective, right? Like you want to be efficient with your body and your movement. And you really, as we age, we really have to be very cautious about how we're training. If we're training for, like, I got to submit this guy, or are we training for longevity? Are we training to be better martial artists? And it does us no good if we run the wheels off, and by the time we get to a point where we may, 60, 65 years old, we may have to defend ourselves against somebody if our body's all broken up, right?
Yeah.
So we have to be mindful that as we're training, we have to do it in a way that builds us up and not breaks us down. And that
Yeah.
changes as you age. And it's necessary to have a healthy perspective on what effectiveness really looks like as you get older. And a lot
Train
of it
in a
is
way
just
that you can
got to
train
be
more of.
health. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in the rest of your lifestyle, like, how are you eating? Like,
Mhm.
you name it. I mean, how's your sleep? What's your home life like? All those things. Like, true, I think longevity is really what we're all looking for, right?
Yeah.
And I
That's
think the
actually
lifestyle part of it is just as important as the technique.
it's a perfect segue, because my next thing that I was going to ask you about is the Lifestyle Summit.
Yeah.
Um,
So I kind of borrowed this idea of the whole concept of jiu-jitsu lifestyle. I was honored to be invited to come out to California years back to one of Hero and Gracie's lifestyle summits, Jiu Jitsu Lifestyle Summit. And I had such an amazing time, great group of people, met some awesome friends. It was much different than your typical, like, Jiu Jitsu seminar experience. Like, most of the time you have a big name come in, they teach technique and just like, awesome. Then you may train a little bit or whatever. And then it's, all right, let's go out to dinner and blah, blah, blah. But so many other aspects of Jiu Jitsu that we don't talk about on a regular basis and implement. And even like the way that he structured, like, the training sessions, it was less about him teaching and more about the philosophy and the sharing. Like, everyone got a chance to share, like, hey, what would you do in this position? Let's talk about it. Like, oh, that's a good idea. Okay, well, this is what I like to do. And I just found that interaction to be really, really refreshing and a great learning experience. I learned so much that way. And I went out to 3 of them total. And so I'm like, why don't we just do this here in Ohio? This would be a lot of fun. And so we did one last year. I'm calling it a jiu-jitsu experience or jiu-jitsu lifestyle experience, whatever. But very much influenced by his the experience I had at his summit. It's a much shorter version, but this year we have Mike Casey's coming in, who's one of Helson's oldest, longest running black belts. He's got a school in New York, and amazing teacher. We've had him here a number of times. Really, really good teacher. He spent a lot of time recently with Rickson, and really can really share Rickson's concepts in jiu-jitsu, and it just fits so well with Helson's system. I mean, they would probably not agree with this, but I think Rickson and Helson are probably they're more alike than they're different in a lot of ways. I mean, they're different in many ways, but their jiu-jitsu, rock solid. I mean, both of them is just incredible. I feel like I had the most amazing instructor coming up, and it was really cool to be able to get a chance to train with Rickson and see his concepts and add it into what we already knew. And it was just like icing on the cake, right? So he'll be here for that. That'll be a really fun discussion. We'll do that Friday night. That's kind of a meet and greet, 6 to 8 o'clock. Then the following day, I think we're going to do yoga in the morning. We'll start with that, kind of get everybody loose and limber. And then Pedro Valanche will be here, which is amazing. He's a phenomenal instructor. And you're talking about a guy who spent an enormous amount of time with Ayla Gracie privately. I mean, that was his main instructor. And, had really, really, just an immense amount of time and experience with Elio. And it shows, like, his teaching style, the techniques that he shows, and it'll be very similar to what I experienced with Silvio, right? Every time I'm with him, I know the technique he's showing, but now I know it better and I have a deeper understanding of it. Phenomenal instructor, very inspirational. And everyone's going to really, really love his seminar. I'm super excited to finally be able to bring him in. So that'll be on Saturday. And then after that, our very own General Ferreter will be, I call him Professor General. He's a third-degree black belt under Jacare, but he will be doing a short seminar, 30 to 45 minutes on inspired leadership. So you don't want to miss that. That's going to be incredible. Again, when it comes to leadership and man, and life in general, the guy, he's got so much knowledge and so much to bring to the table. I'm just very, very honored and grateful that he's going to be part of it. So everyone's going to get something great out of that day. Lunch will be provided on Saturday. You don't have to do the whole weekend. You can do just Saturday if you'd like. I'll make sure I get that put up on our website as well, so we can share that. But and then Sunday, if we have enough, we're going to do like a Q&A lifestyle kind of, philosophy, technique, training, and then some breath work and an ice bath. So that'll be fun. And then if we have time, we'll go, and weather permitting, we're going to go right across the street. We've got a reservoir over here right across the street, and we'll go out on the water. Our good friend RJ has a pontoon boat. We've got some paddle boards and stuff, and just have some fellowship, for that weekend. And everyone had a great time last year, and I think it's going to be the same thing this year. It's going to be incredible.
That's tremendous. So Robin, I'm going to kind of start wrapping up this episode, but we'll definitely have you back. If people want to train with you, or if they want to learn more about your academy or what you're doing, where should they go?
Well, all things Gracie, Ohio, I guess. GracieOhio.com is our website. But if you go to any of our social media, it's always like Instagram/Gracie, Ohio. Look us up on Instagram. We're even on TikTok, even though I don't have that on my phone. It's YouTube. We got a good following on YouTube, almost 60,000 subscribers. So go like and subscribe and all that. So yeah, Facebook/Gracie, Ohio.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you again.
Thank you.
I seriously appreciate you being willing to kind of take a section of your day out. And
I appreciate it very much.
That's going to wrap up my conversation with Professor Robin Gieseler. Huge thanks again for sharing his journey and his wisdom, his passion for keeping jiu-jitsu alive and thriving here in Ohio and beyond. If you're listening, I hope you took away some lessons about perseverance and community and what it truly means to live a jiu-jitsu lifestyle. And if you enjoyed this episode, do me a favor, share it with a teammate or a friend or anyone that might be thinking about starting their own jiu-jitsu journey. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. You can follow us on your favorite podcast platform, so Spotify, Apple Podcasts, a bunch of others. And check out Still Rolling on Instagram and TikTok at StillRollingBJJ. Again, I'm Matthew Montgomery. Every follow and like and share helps us reach more people, and we'll keep these conversations going. I do plan on having Professor General Michael Ferreter on soon. We're getting our schedules together. So just keep training, keep learning, and of course, keep rolling. And I'll see you on the next episode. Thank you.